right, and we are live from the campaign trail on this Wednesday evening with major breaking news, including J.D. Vance's rebuke of Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris is disgraceful. We're going to talk about a story out of those 13 brave, innocent Americans who lost their lives. It's that Kamala Harris is so asleep at the wheel that she won't even do an investigation into what happened, and she wants to yell at Donald Trump because he showed up. She can go to hell.
You are going to be hearing that soundbite on repeat with outrage. Vance said that on his swing state blitz in Pennsylvania. Now he is in Wisconsin. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are traveling the state of Georgia on a bus, and they're not in the urban parts. Stunning new data about young black women shows the Peach State could totally change the dynamics of this year's election. The intensity of the campaign right now feels like an October afternoon rather than the Wednesday before Labor Day. And with that, we welcome you to the fairest show on television. First tonight, Kamala Harris's 10-word campaign. It's been 40 days now, the Kamala Harris campaign. I will sum it up for you. She is, quote, for all things good and against all things Donald Trump. 10 words. That sums up the Harris campaign. Those words mean anything you want them to mean, and that's pretty much the idea. Harris's campaign wants to be all things to all people. If you're wondering where they got that idea, Joe Biden, because it worked for him in 2020. Take, for example, fracking. Simple question that Harris said she wanted to ban in 2019. Now, who knows? We can't ask her. She doesn't do media availabilities. But CNN, to their credit, asked her spokesman.
Do you know why she's changed her position?
Listen, I mean, she's been very clear here. She's proud of the work that she's done as a part of this administration, making sure that American energy production is at an all-time high.
But on fracking, was there something that changed her mind, specifically during the 4 years of the Biden presidency?
No, listen, again, the vice president is very proud of the Biden-Harris administration's record on energy production and the economy writ large.
Again, it is difficult to nail down what Kamala Harris actually thinks, and that's kind of the point. We're told she's going to do one interview with Tim Walz by her side and Dana Bash of CNN asking the questions. That offers a whole new opportunity to give 10-word answers. Now, to be fair to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, why would they change what they're doing? It is working well. The Cook Political Report just changed their election forecast, saying North Carolina is now a toss-up rather than likely Trump. Our partners at Decision Desk HQ changed their forecast and moved Michigan from toss-up to likely Harris. These are major changes that only widen Harris's path to the White House, now just 69 days away from election. But rather than talking about the real questions voters have about Harris's current policy stances, things about guns, your health care, taxes, the only thing we seem to hear about lately is Donald Trump's appearance at Arlington Cemetery. He was there on Monday. We reported on it. On the third anniversary of the Abbey Gate suicide bombing, 13 American service members died during the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. This is now Wednesday. Here's the coverage of Trump at Arlington.
And the idea that any candidate of any party would use intentionally or unintentionally use that sacred ground as a prop for a political campaign is beyond condemnation.
The principle is that no person or party, either side, should ever use Arlington National Cemetery or any of our cemeteries or battlefields for partisan political purposes.
We start tonight with Geraldo Rivera, NewsNation contributor, a large Peabody Award-winning journalist. Geraldo,
hi, Leland.
I have no awards, so I looked up what a Peabody Award is for. It's for honoring stories that matters. And I want to ask you, what is a bigger scandal? As someone who spent a lot of time with our troops in Afghanistan, is the bigger scandal that 13 Americans died in Afghanistan and the Harris-Biden administration that oversaw the withdrawal? Neither Harris nor Biden has called a single member of those 13 families, and none of them bothered to show up at the ceremony on Monday. or that a campaign photographer was part of the press pool that Donald Trump brought to Arlington?
You know, first of all, and it really irks me, Kamala Harris didn't kill the 13 GIs. Joe Biden didn't kill the 13 GIs. An ISIS-K suicide bomber killed our 13 beloved service members. You know, I think that we have to keep that straight. The fact that the Democrats have never explained the chaotic withdrawal is shameful. But on a different level and for perhaps different reasons, the incident at Arlington was also shameful. I mean, anyone who's been there, and I'm sure you've been there, or many of the people watching right now have been there, it is sacred ground. You don't take a campaign photographer for a photo op to Arlington. It's just, it's unheard of. It's horrible. And perhaps easier understand than the, maybe you can argue more. Just
to insert a couple of facts into this. Hold on. Just to insert this. The Gold Star families, who were the family members at Arlington, put out a tweet from Michael Walz, who's the congressman who's helped them through that. We would like to express our heartfelt thanks and appreciation to President Donald Trump for his presence at the recent Section 60 gathering, honoring our children and fallen brothers and sisters on the 3-year anniversary of the Abbey Gate bombing. The president and his team conducted themselves with nothing but the utmost respect and dignity for all our service members, especially our beloved children. I'm wondering why the media thinks they know better than the Gold Star families.
I can't answer. I'm
asking you. You just said what he did was shameful.
Member.
I'm asking you why you think you know better than the families.
To me, as an American citizen, I didn't come to fight you about this. I'm just telling you that when I saw that he had a campaign photographer at Arlington, it really irked me in a way. And I did 11 assignments in Afghanistan. It was a horrible withdrawal. The Kabul airport has always been chaotic. Yeah. And I think that trying to blame a politician in the midst of a political campaign what did Kamala Harris have to do with the way that withdrawal was conducted? I'm not sure that she had much sway. I don't know why they didn't hold Bagram Airfield and have a much more orderly retreat. That's on the Biden administration forever. I don't know why the Democrats didn't feel the need to show up at Arlington, but I can tell you that when I saw President Trump at Arlington with this media kind of event, I didn't like it. Now, the Gold Star family, Trump anything, Trump in the verb, anything about how I feel about it, they are, whatever they say goes as far as I'm concerned.
You said, and I thought it was interesting, you said you didn't know how much Harris had to do with this. It's interesting, right? Because she, in an interview, was very proud to say that she was the last person in the room when the decision was made. And it brings us to this larger issue, right, of how, and I don't blame Kamala Harris because politicians do what's in their best interest, how the media is allowing at all Kamala Harris to divorce herself from everything that is the Biden-Harris administration. In fact, when J.D. Vance tried to bring up the Biden-Harris record, this is from Politico, our corrupt leadership is the quote, Vance tries to tether Harris to Biden during Michigan rally. Wouldn't it be the media that should be holding Harris accountable for what people are upset about the Joe Biden record?
All right. Let me say something. I want to be very clear about it. I was in Afghanistan 11 times between 2001 and 2012. No one I know, no GI I met in any service, and maybe I'm being too cosmic in my answer here, but I think that everyone believes Afghanistan in the rearview mirror is exactly where it should be. It was the longest war in American history. How long were we going to stay there, helping to fuel that violence that was just going around and around and around for no good reason? For no good reason. Okay. Afghanistan with the Taliban, the Taliban was in charge before 9/11, and the Taliban was given $50 million by the United States government at that time for going against the opium fields. suppressing the opium export.
Stipulated on Afghanistan. I'll give you the last 60 seconds. I'll give you the last 60 seconds on whether Kamala Harris should have to answer for the Biden-Harris administration.
Well, I wrote that down. For all things good and against all things Donald Trump. I thought that was brilliant in War Notes. See, I did my homework before I came to join you this evening. I think that Harris and Walz and Trump and Vance will run as tickets, but it will be the head of the ticket that most people focus on. Why Harris is doing a mutual couples interview with Walz, Governor Walz, I don't know. Although all of the candidates have done it. Obama did it. Biden did it. Trump did it. They all do duets at some point, maybe to show that they really like each other. I don't know. But we'll see more about the candidates, but it will focus on the head of the tickets. And Afghanistan, if it comes down to a referendum on whether or not we should have left Afghanistan, I have no doubt how that one would turn out, Leland.
All right. We'll see if Dana Bash asks about it. That's tomorrow night. Interestingly enough, she was the one who asked Harris that famous question about being the last person in the room. Yeah, I think I agree with you there. All right, Geraldo, have a great weekend. We'll talk soon, my friend.
Thank you, Leland. Thank you.
All right. Dennis Quaid tells us whether it's harder to play Reagan the president or Reagan the husband in his new film, Reagan, and Senator Ted Cruz on how his 9-point lead in Texas evaporated. Donald Trump is dragging down Republicans. What are they going to do about it when we come back? The faster Kamala Harris rises in the polls, the more Donald Trump can't help his worst instincts. Like last night with Dr. Phil, Trump went back to one of his favorite topics, wind turbines, and then added a new one, Jesus and counting votes in California.
Wind is the most expensive energy in the world, and the environmentalists love it. Why do they love it? It kills all the birds. Guarantee, if Jesus came down and was the vote counter, I would win California.
We'll keep thinking about what he meant by that, but let's just consider Trump's week. We've learned his running mate, J.D. Vance, once despaired the teachers union president for pushing policy when she doesn't have biological children. And RFK Jr. allegedly cut off the head of a whale with a chainsaw. To be fair, we learned about the whale and the chainsaw after Trump named RFK co-chair of his transition committee. But Trump's antics aren't just hurting Trump or Trump's decisions. See if you call them antics, that's up to you. Take, for example, the crucial Senate race in Texas. New polling from the University of Houston shows Republican Senator Ted Cruz now with a 2-point lead over Democratic challenger Congressman Colin Allred. Back in January, the same polling had Cruz up 9. Senator Cruz is with us now, member of the Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committee from Tyler, Texas. It is good to see you, sir. Thank you. I don't know any other way to ask this but directly. Is Donald Trump becoming a drag on Republicans?
No, I don't think so at all. I think Donald Trump is going to win in November, and I think we're going to see Republicans take the Senate, and I think we're going to win the House. Look, we're right now at a moment where Kamala Harris is enjoying a sugar high. She has been named as the nominee without a single Democrat voting for her for president, but she's been named as the nominee, and for a month, the media has been doing a relentless propaganda, billions of dollars of propaganda trying to prop her up. And that entire month, Kamala Harris has done 0 media interviews. She's done 0 press conferences. Their strategy is they take her to a basement, I guess Joe Biden's basement, where they kept him, and they hide her from ever answering a question. And Leland, the reason they do that is because Kamala's record is terrible. Kamala's record has been a disaster for the American people. I think most elections are decided by the very simple question, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And I think for just about every American, the answer is no. And so my view at the top of the ticket, Donald Trump, the path to victory is focus on the issues, focus out on people's lives. We were doing much, much better when Trump was president. And in my race here in Texas, it's the exact same issue. My opponent Colin Allred, a very, very liberal Democrat congressman, is doing Kamala Harris's exact same strategy. He's hiding in the basement. He does almost no media interviews. It's been 63 days since Colin Allred has done a press conference. I've done 12 press conferences in that same period of time. The reason is the same. They hide from the press because they can't defend their record.
We've made that point over and over and over again about Kamala Harris, and it is a very valid one. The fact of the matter, though, is it's working. And Republicans have yet to seem to find a way to counter it. Why is that?
Well, look, I think the way to counter it is to focus on the issues and focus on substance. So on the border, Kamala Harris spent 4 years as the border czar, and the border is a disaster. It's the number one issue in Texas. It's the number one issue in the country. Kamala Harris is responsible for an invasion at the southern border of 11.5 million illegal aliens. Colin Allred, my opponent, has voted repeatedly in favor of those open borders, and yet both of them now are running campaign ads pretending to be tough on the border. Suddenly, yesterday, Kamala Harris suddenly decided she was for a border wall, despite saying over and over and over again she would never support it. Colin Allred, my opponent, is running ads right now in Texas. The border wall at one point was
un-American. Right, the border wall was un-American. I get all that. I get all that. But I keep hearing from Republicans, and I've heard it since the first week that Kamala Harris became coronated as the nominee, that this sugar high was going to end. I'm not asking you about the issues. I'm asking you, how are Republicans going to get a win and change the conversation when so far, for 40 days, you all have been unable to?
Yeah, look, it's incumbent on the Trump campaign to focus on the issues, on how people's lives are worse off under Kamala Harris than they were under Donald Trump. Under Donald Trump, we had record prosperity. We had, after the 2017 tax cuts, we had the lowest unemployment in 50 years. We had the lowest African-American unemployment ever recorded, the lowest Hispanic unemployment ever recorded. We had millions of people coming off food stamps and coming into prosperity. We also secured the border. I worked hand in hand with Donald Trump. We produced the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. The record of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Colin Allred has been disastrous for millions of Americans. You know, I've joked, unless you happen to be a big tech billionaire or a Mexican drug lord, and by the way, if you're either one of those, if you're a Mexican drug lord, you should definitely vote for Kamala Harris because she has made you billions of dollars. It's been incredibly good for you. But if you're a working family, inflation, crime, the invasion at the border, every one of those has been a failure. And so the Trump campaign, I think, needs to focus on those. And I can promise you in Texas, that's what I'm focused on, is laying out the difference between my record of producing results and Colin Allred's extreme left-wing record that is hurting Texans.
And I want to be fair where we can be. We've asked Colin Allred to come on a number of times. He refuses to. Yeah. You are often nice enough to give us time, which we are grateful for, and come on and have a discussion. And Allred has a long history of dodging the press. We have one of those moments. Take a listen.
We're on federal property. Can't do this here.
Congressman Allred, do you regret calling for the release of millions of dollars to Hamas? Do you regret voting against Iron Dome funding as Hamas attacked Israel with rockets aimed at civilians?
You're on federal property. Stop doing this.
Why are you supporting Biden's open border policies?
We'll get the Capitol Police for you.
I don't know what being on federal property has to do with it, but the point is the same. Kamala Harris, Colin Allred, most Democrats right now are running the same kind of campaign because they can. You made the point just now that it is incumbent on the Trump campaign and on Donald Trump to talk about the issues, as you just have very articulately done. But he's not doing that. He's talking about wind turbines and Jesus counting votes in California. GOP billionaire donor Eric Levine, via Jewish Insider, the Trump campaign proudly announced that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard are being added to his transition team. It's hard to imagine a more self-destructive announcement. At what point do Republicans need to worry that Donald Trump is not doing the very things that you just said he needs to be doing?
Well, let me say a couple of things. One, I can't let that clip you just played of Colin Allred go by without observing. What he said there was utter nonsense. This is federal property. I'm going to call the Capitol Police. He's at the U.S. Capitol. Every day in the U.S. Capitol, there are reporters everywhere that ask you questions. I answer probably 50 questions from a reporter every day in the Capitol. And so the bizarre idea I'm going to send henchmen to lock you up. How dare you ask me a question? That's just weird, Leland. You've spent time at the Capitol. You know what I'm saying is true, but it is an example. And listen, that's exactly what Kamala Harris is doing as well. I will say on your second point, the question you asked, I disagree with that comment. I actually think Bobby Kennedy endorsing Donald Trump is a really good thing. It's a big development. You look at Kennedy right now, he was polling anywhere between 3% and 6% in the swing states. The overwhelming majority of those Kennedy voters view Donald Trump as far preferable to Kamala Harris. So I think that endorsement alone could be worth 1 to 2 points in the swing states. That's a big deal. And I think a lot of the media trying to poo-poo it are diminishing what is unquestionably a good win. I also thought Tulsi Gabbard's speech endorsing Donald Trump, she's a veteran. She cares about veterans. She's been a Democrat her whole life. She was a Democrat congresswoman. I thought that was really powerful, that Trump is fighting for the men and women of the military, and that Kamala's record on the military is disastrous. You look at the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan, 13 dead servicemen and women, which neither Kamala or Joe Biden even bothered to acknowledge. It's powerful, and so I thought both of those were really significant and positive for the Trump campaign and positive for Republicans nationally.
All right. Senator, enjoy the Labor Day weekend. We always appreciate you taking time with us. As we mentioned, Mr. Allred, Congressman Allred wants to come on. He's always welcome. Thanks, Senator. We appreciate it.
Leland, thank you very much. And let me encourage folks, go to our website. It's tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. I need your support. It's a 2-point race. It is a 2-point race. We've had 2 polls that show it as a 2-point race, and Chuck Schumer is spending over $100 million trying to beat me, so I need you to come to tedcruz.org. It's coming right now. It's tedcruz.org.
All right, you got it in. It's good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Leland. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. When we come back, Dennis Quaid tells us about the challenges of becoming Ronald Reagan for a new film and why Facebook doesn't want you to see it. I haven't been to a movie theater in years. I don't know about you, but not much of a movie guy in theaters. But I might go this weekend. That's to see a new movie called Reagan, starring Dennis Quaid as the Gipper.
Ronnie, remember when we met? You told me that you wanted to make a difference in this world. You know what you have to do.
Governor Reagan, again, typically is against such a proposal.
There you go again. But he was not afraid to take us on.
There's nothing a retired governor can do about the Soviets, but a president, now he can do a thing or two.
Dennis Quaid joins us now from the red carpet for the movie Reagan. You've said that this is much more of a love story than it is a political story. What was harder, playing and learning Reagan the president or Reagan the husband?
Well, they're both one and the same. There wouldn't have been a President Reagan without Nancy Reagan, and that's not because of any kind of involvement on her part in policy or anything like that. It's just the strength of their marriage and partnership. It was incredible. And at the core of this movie, it is a love story between he and Nancy. It's also, about the Cold War, which was really an extension of World War II. Reagan was the one who ended that, along with Lech Walesa and the Pope and Margaret Thatcher and Gorbachev.
So Reagan was your president. Was there a moment from his presidency that you liked playing the role of the most?
I really liked when he was governor of California. He was in his 50s. He had that walk, that John Wayne walk. He was like the new sheriff in town, wherever he went. That was Reagan to me.
What about Reagan's personality as an actor was an actor versus Reagan being Reagan? And at some point, I'm thinking in the movie that you are an actor playing another actor.
Yeah, kind of forming a kind of an enigma within a riddle there, aren't you? we were both actors, Reagan and I, and we both kind of have sunny dispositions. But you never get away from yourself when you're playing a role, and neither did Reagan. Sometimes Reagan even said that the best role he ever had was president of the United States. In a way, that's really qualifies you for that job.
Yeah, no, it's often been said. You think about Churchill, you think about Roosevelt as they delivered addresses, the acting ability that was there. What did you do? What did you study? What did you find most useful in becoming and living the Ronald Reagan persona?
Well, he was my favorite president. I voted for him twice. First time I voted for him, I went home and my roommate said, "Who'd you vote for?" I said, "Reagan." He said, "You are kicked out of the hippies." Like I said, he was my favorite president. And I like to say that this movie is also, it's about all of us. It goes through 8 decades of the American 20th century. And if you were born before 1985, you get a chance to remember how great this country used to be. And if you're born after 85, you get a glimpse of how great this country still can be.
What do you make of the reception so far to this movie versus if this had been a Kennedy biopic?
The response has been overwhelming with this film. I've never had a film with this kind of build-up, one of the airports or the grocery store or getting gas or whatever. People come up to me that know about it, and they all seem to have an emotional connection to Reagan. I think all of us did, in the sense that, especially for baby boomers like me, Reagan was like our dad. And that was, for better or for worse, it was either the good dad or the dad that you really admired and wanted to be like, or he was the dad that you rebelled against at the same time. But still was family,
Are you seeing a change in Hollywood towards embracing, I don't want to say Republicans or Republican values, but at least a nod to traditional values?
I think that the whole world is turning right side up again, that the pendulum is swinging back. Common sense is going on. The United States has always been a country that every once in a while we have a little experiment. We had one in the 60s, and I think the last few years has been that way too. And, may not seem it at the time, but we wind up better for it in the end. And, but I do feel that is swinging around again to the point where we can talk to each other. Republicans and Democrats, we need each other. That's what we are afraid to admit. We keep each other from going too far one way or the next. And I know George Washington didn't want political parties, but you got to have one side and the other so you can come to a compromise on something, and that's what the United States is so great at.
You think about Reagan's presidency, one of the reported but I think underappreciated parts of it was his friendship with Tip O'Neill, the Speaker of the House, ardent Democrat. How does that come across in the movie? How do you play that? How do you represent that friendship?
Well, we definitely pointed at that. To me, the movie is not political. It's not ideological in any sense. It's American. And Tip O'Neill, who was Speaker of the House in a Democrat-led Congress, by the way, that Reagan came into and got so much done during his first term. They agreed that they were going to be political enemies, staunch political enemies during the day, but then after 6 o'clock, they were going to be two Irishmen having a beer. And together, they really did get a lot done.
They did indeed. Congratulations on the movie. We're looking forward to it. We appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Reagan's in theaters nationwide Friday. NewsNation also has an in-depth look at the life of the 40th president. Reagan, Portrait of a Presidency, will re-air ahead of the election on November 2nd. We write a lot about Ronald Reagan, his wisdom and his wit in War Notes. That is our email newsletter that comes out every day at 4 p.m. You can subscribe for free at warnotes.com. Pick up your phone, warnotes.com, type in your email address. You can reply to the email as well. We read them all. Or connect to us on social media at Leland Vittert. We'll see you back for War Notes on Tuesday after a break. Coming up here after a break, a former Hollywood producer figured out how to bring some of America's biggest companies to their knees. What he's exposing about who really supports DEI. Cow of DEI. In the past month or so, Ford, Tractor Supply, Lowe's, John Deere, Jack Daniels, and Harley Davidson have all made major changes because of an online campaign organized by Robbie Starbuck.
ERGs based on the sex people prefer to have seems wildly inappropriate to the average Lowe's customer, bordering on sexual harassment, as does funding pride events and transitions via healthcare policy. Nobody needs a club for what kind of sex they like at work. It's just weird, okay? I don't care if you're gay or straight. This is something I've advocated for with every one of these woke companies. If you're gonna make donations, do it to things that are unifying to everybody that nobody who's sane should have a problem with.
All right, Robbie Starbuck is with us now. Thank you. Appreciate you joining us. I don't know about you, but what I've been most struck by throughout your campaign, I've been following it. You went after Tractor Supply in the beginning. They sort of issued this mea culpa, is the lack of pushback from the diversity is our strength folks.
You know, honestly, it does exist, but here's the thing that this campaign has proven. They really do not have sizable public support. That's the issue, is that they've had these, sort of conglomerate groups like the HRC as their attack dogs for a long time. But in reality, how many real people were behind that? And the answer is not very many. This whole thing.
Just to stop you for a second, HRC is Human Rights Commission?
Human Rights Campaign, which I struggle to even say because what they do has nothing to do with human rights. They're there to advance a far left ideology. That's why I called them the HRC, because I hate saying human rights part, because they definitely human rights. But yeah, no, they essentially have been the vehicle to push these politics throughout corporate America. And so these companies got fooled into believing that there's some army there that does not exist. This was all a house of cards. Somebody just had to press the first card. And that's kind of what we've done here, is we push that. But at the same time,
but it wasn't just help me, though. It wasn't just, though, an army of liberals who all believed that unicorns and rainbow flags brought profits. There was a lot of studies out there. Consulting firm McKinsey found a link between profits and racial and gender diversity. 2023 study, Diversity Matters Even More. We're told McKinsey is some of the smartest people around. Alumni of McKinsey are in the administration because of how smart they are. If it is profitable to be diverse, why aren't these companies pushing back?
Well, because it's not profitable to be diverse. But what's popular is to really what'll make you money is if you run your company based off of merit, not off diversity. I'm a minority myself. Look, I would stand to benefit from these ludicrous policies. So would my children. But the whole idea is I don't want my kids to be diversity hires. I want my kids to be hired based off of merit, not because their family's Cuban. Okay, I think that's something we should all be able to agree on, because it's really the bigotry of low expectations. What DEI is telling my kids is you need a boost because you're not as good as a kid who, is, let's say, Scottish, their mom's Scottish. It's that's ridiculous. Life should be predicated off of the work you put in, not your skin color, your ethnicity, or your sex. And I think that should be a very basic concept everybody can get with.
Okay. From the Wall Street Journal, diversity was supposed to make us rich, not so much. New researcher questions the methodology of McKinsey study that helped create widespread belief that diversity is good for profits. Academics have tried to repeat McKinsey's findings and failed, concluding there is, in fact, no link between profitability and executive diversity. We've been showing video of Bud Light. I think that's because this was sort of the first pushback, right? Now I'm blanking on her name, the transgender woman, Dylan Mulvaney, who had the Bud Light can. Yeah, Dylan Mulvaney with the Bud Light can. That was sort of the first. Was that the first card here? And then you figured out that there is this group of Bud Light drinkers, Tractor Supply buying, Lowe's shopping individuals who didn't really realize how, and I'll use this pejoratively, but woke the companies they were buying from was?
Well, the Bud Light thing was an accident, but I do have to say about the McKinsey thing, referencing them as smart. I think the people who have spread that rumor are people who were from McKinsey before. I don't know that rumor is true. I find them to be very unimpressive people. But, I really think that the Bud Light thing taught us a few things, and it was that we have power together, and we need to learn to organize the way the left has to create real change. And that organization is something that was missing from the Bud Light piece, though. You had the numbers, but not the organization, not the direct, calls to action. And so that's what we changed, is we said, the number one PR strategy that there is to say, let's wait for this to blow over. So we need to build a strategy that is predicated off of not blowing over. And a byproduct of that is, you've got this group of people that is engaged with this on a day-over-day basis. And so you don't miss people, because sometimes if I do a story today, some people are going to miss it today. But if I continue with the story tomorrow and the next day and the next day, you're going to get those people you missed on the first day. So we're able to bring together a larger contingent of people, and the company has to deal with it for a prolonged period of time. And that's what sort of changed the game with this is there's, somebody who's kind of directing it and as a general to say, hey, here's the one click button you can do to call and email this company and let them know how you feel. Here's what we need to do next. And I think that strategy is helping so that people are able to keep continual pressure on the companies to make changes.
I would also add to that, and I think people can check you out on Twitter. That's where I found you and followed you for a while, is that you come with the receipts, right? You're not just saying, hey, this company's woke. You're reading their own policies and explaining to people what they mean in their own internal documents, and then people can make their own decision whether they want to purchase from the company or, as you say, have a call to action. Robbie, we appreciate you joining us. Come back and talk to us about it as you keep going after this, all right?
Will do. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you. Kamala Harris's bus tour is going through Georgia right now. Why she's focusing on rural Georgia. And I'll show you the shocking data that might mean the Peach State is now hers to lose. Kamala Harris and her running mate will spend the next few days crisscrossing Georgia and not the urban parts. They believe turning out rural black voters in traditional Trump counties can totally change the race.
But the Democratic strategy for winning Georgia now involves cutting the Republican margins in rural parts of the state where at least Democratic presidential candidates rarely, if ever, go to. There's been a number of more than a dozen visits from both President Biden and Vice President Harris to Georgia the last couple of years. Only 2 of them came from outside of Metro Atlanta. Now there's going to be 2 days of stops outside of Metro Atlanta.
Tia Mitchell, Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's with us. Scott Bolden, NewsNation contributor, former D.C. Democratic Party chairman. Nice to be surrounded by people smarter than me on the set. Tia, I'll start with you. What are you hearing on the ground from Georgia as to why and what the Harris campaign is seeing that's having them do this?
Well, you just showed a soundbite from my colleague, Greg Bluestein.
Yes.
And he's exactly right. What the Harris campaign is doing in South Georgia is trying to leave no stones unturned. At the end of the day, the electoral college vote comes down to the popular vote in each state. So no, South Georgia isn't necessarily where Harris-Walz ticket can get a majority of their votes, but there are votes to be had even in these rural areas. Rural Georgia is 25% black, for example. Those are Democratic voters. So they're there trying to speak directly to their supporters, their base, but in rural areas that don't often see candidates.
Right, and not seeing candidates suddenly juices turnout, it juices voter registration. Target Smart, July 2020 versus July 2024. Young black women, Scott, registering to vote at 175% basis. Young Latinas, 149%. Young women in general, 83.7%. Here's the question, right? Is after 40 days that the race is effectively now tied between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, is what we're seeing just a catch-up? Donald Trump, sorry. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. It's been a long week already. Is what we're seeing
Trump can't get that right either.
just a catch-up here? Or is what we are seeing an explosion above where a normal Democrat would be?
It's the Kamala effect. We want to overwin. We want to win big because we know there are going to be challenges with certification in the red states and some of the swing states. And so what else is going on in southern Georgia with that campaign is that they're moderate Republicans and other voters. And when Donald Trump is topped out at 47% and Kamala is surging right now, you ride that surge and you got to go find some independents, some more Democrats who are usually ignored, and some moderate Republicans that can help you win Georgia and keep it blue. Remember, they won in 2020.
Well, it's not only 2020, right, but it's 2022. This is the Raphael Warnock.
Yes.
The Raphael Warnock, senator from Georgia, Democrat, former preacher.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's the difference in 2024, which will make it a little bit harder for Democrats. In 2020, when Biden carried Georgia, Ossoff and Warnock were on the ballot with him. So there was a lot of energy, not just about carrying the state for the presidential ticket, but flipping the Senate. So that helped juice turnout. He doesn't have that. Kamala Harris doesn't have that in 2024. There is no other statewide race on the ballot in Georgia. It's pretty much just the presidential contest on the kind of the big high profile races this cycle. And so she's got a juice turnout on her own without these other races to kind of drum up.
And without the other money being spent, right? And I guess, Scott, this is where it comes down to. I keep hearing from Republicans, this is a sugar high, this is a sugar high. I get the excitement after 40 days. What is the plan for Democrats post-Labor Day, not to hold what they have, because that's a tie, but to actually gain on it?
Well,
where does she pivot?
Well, it's not much of a pivot. It is put your pedal to the metal, stay disciplined, right? Don't have any major hookups, and continue to drive this wave of euphoria and energy towards November 5th.
Boy.
And she can do that.
Turn 40 days into 110 days of no mistakes?
Well, she hadn't made any so far, and her strategy...
She hasn't talked to anybody so far.
Well, that strategy's a winning strategy because she's ahead nationally by 3 or 4 points and tied or ahead in many of the swing states. So you got to get one more vote than the next guy. That's all that matters. You
don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun the next slowest person.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you both. Appreciate it. Good to see both of you. You'll see Elizabeth Pran here tomorrow night. And then on Friday, this Labor Day weekend, go spend time with people you love. Don't talk about politics. 40% of Americans are afraid to tell people who they're going to vote for. That shouldn't be what defines us. Somehow that has happened. Be different this Labor Day weekend. Don't talk about politics. Talk about something we can all agree on, like football. Because Alabama truly will make a comeback this year. You heard it here first. Chris is in New York.